Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I always just like to allow my guests to tell their own stories. And so for the listeners of the Michigan Makers podcast, who is Lisa Seymour? I'm pronouncing it right, Seymour?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
That's my name. So I currently am the director of the Techstars mobility program based here in downtown Detroit. I moved to the city about 13 years ago from Davison, Michigan, which is just outside of Flint. I moved down here to go to school at Wayne State. Did my undergrad there, got my MBA from Wayne State, worked at the university for a few years, and then got into the tech world around 2014, started working at Duo Security. And then from there, Techstars was spinning up a Detroit program, and I got brought on board to help run the program here.
Yeah, and so going back to your time at Wayne State, you were an athlete, right? Softball, was that it?
I was, yep.
Yeah.
I attended Wayne State on a softball scholarship.
Nice. And so, like, have you, because I always find it interesting with athletes, like that go into professions, like the stuff they bring on, like maybe it's just a competitive drive. Have you brought anything from like your softball days?
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I think I can't speak for every student athlete, but I think sort of the things you learn being a student athlete carries over very well into most careers. Most importantly, time management. I think you'll never be as busy as you are being a college athlete. You're probably in the weight room at 6 a.m. and then you're at classes 8 to 4, and then you're at study table, and then you're at practice, and every day is just a full day, and you're traveling every weekend, or you have games every weekend. So I think carrying over some of that discipline and time management skills that you learn being a college athlete, it's really helpful in the working world.
Yeah, and so you've sort of like kept your fitness level at least like relatively to that, because it's hard like when you're not an athlete anymore, to be at that like peak level of physicality. But so you do CrossFit, right?
I do.
Yeah. So here's one. What's been like your most favorite CrossFit workout, but also like what's been like the most torturous?
So I guess I'm a little different from most CrossFit athletes in the sense that I really enjoy running. So actually after I finished up playing softball at Wayne State, I got really into long distance running, and I ran a few marathons. Found CrossFit about 2 years ago and just fell in love with it. It's so humbling. You think you're fit until you walk into a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
So there's just always something to improve on. And I love the competitive nature of it too. If you want to get some competitions in, that's really fun to do as well. So my favorite CrossFit workout, I would say anything that involves running or any sort of long chipper type workout, lightweight, high rep.
Have you ever done the Memorial Day one? I forget the name of that.
Yeah, Memorial Day Murph WOD.
Yes,
Yep,
Murph,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, love that workout. It's a ton of fun. And then our gym down here, CrossFit in the D, we all get together, do the workout together, hang out for a while, have a picnic, stuff like that. So it's a great community event too.
Yeah. For me, that's probably been the only one that I actually enjoyed, because it wasn't too bad, and like yeah.
You might be one of the few people to say that it's not too bad.
I mean, I didn't. Here's the thing: I didn't do it with the weighted vest.
Okay,
so
well,
that helps.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely tore my hands up just because of the pull-ups.
Yeah.
But like that's just like a given with that. But yeah, I don't know. I think the runs also. I mean, I don't like long distance, but I think the runs are like. I mean, they're only like mile runs to start and cap, right? But yeah, it's not too bad. But yeah, and I also may have, it's funny you mentioned marathon, because a buddy of mine, a couple of friends of mine, they just ran a marathon like on spec, and they live in LA. And so I was just with them last week, and we were talking about it, and one of them, Steve, he was like, yeah, I'm also going to be running a half Ironman later this year. Want to do it? And I was like, and then like they were all just like egging me on, and I was like, all right. And then we shook hands, and I'm like, wait, what did I just sign up for? Because I'm like, it's not just running. It's literally 3 different things. Like, and it's like, oh man, holy crap. Anyway, so once you started to get into the tech industry, how did you end up getting looped into Duo?
Yeah, so I actually had one of my close friends was working there, and just in my job search, I came across an open position, and I reached out to him, and just to get his thoughts on the company at the time. It was 2014. It was only probably about 50 or 60 people. You know, it's an enormous company now. I think they're in 4 different cities and hundreds of employees at this point. So I just reached out to him, got some background on the company, and applied for the position, and was lucky enough to get an interview and get the job.
Nice. And so what was like your favorite part about that?
My favorite part about working at Duo is something that was brand new to me.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, right after college, I started working at the university. And anybody who's ever worked in a university knows, you know, they're pretty big institutions. They can be pretty bureaucratic, sometimes political. So slow moving. And so I think being a part of a startup was very much the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So it was new, it was exciting, a ton of brilliant, smart people that I was able to learn a ton from, really driven, competitive people. So it was just fun to be in that different sort of environment.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like always interesting to compare and contrast, like, because there's a university, and then there's also like the government, which is kind of like that, and then startups are just like literally you could be doing something different every single like hour even. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And not to say that I didn't like my time at Wayne State, you know, I went to school there, got my graduate degree from there. So it's a great university. And I was working in the athletic department too, which is, you know, near and dear to my heart. So working very closely with our coaches and our student athletes, which was fun. But looking for something different, Duo was a great switch.
yeah. And so from Duo you moved on to Techstars.
Yeah.
So tell the story of how that came to be.
Yeah, so I was working at Duo, but living in Detroit. So I was making that 45-minute hour commute back and forth every single day. And after about 9 or 10 months of that, I was just kind of like, hey, you know what? I want to be in the city. I want to commit to it. I want to be here, working here, living here. So I just mentioned that to a few people at Duo. They were totally on board and understood. And then actually the CEO there, Doug, introduced me to Ted. He was like, hey, you should meet my buddy Ted, who's spinning up a Techstars program in Detroit, which I had no idea was happening. So Ted and I met probably about 3 or 4 months before Techstars actually closed the funding and announced the program here. And once they did, we just kind of continued the conversations and talked to some other people at Techstars, some of my counterparts in other cities, and then got brought on board in February of 2015 to run the program.
And so with Techstars as, you know, a global organization, what programs do you have in place that allow the startups in your program to engage with, you know, people from not just the US, not just the other accelerators in like LA and, you know, the Alexa accelerator in Seattle, but also, you know, globally?
Yeah, so we're a worldwide network to help entrepreneurs succeed. The idea is that if you're a mobility startup, probably at some point you're going to have to come through Southeast Michigan with your business, just because there's so many OEMs and suppliers and so much industry expertise here. And then not to mention all of the new resources that are coming into play with the American Center for Mobility and M-City over in Ann Arbor, a lot of the test beds and other things that are happening in Ann Arbor and Detroit, and also up in Flint at Kettering. And so we're really trying to recruit the best mobility startups in the world to come to our program in Detroit. And so far we've had companies from 6 different countries, only 2 from Michigan and none from Detroit. So we're trying to expose as many companies as possible to what Southeast Michigan has to offer. But that being said, the network is global. And so we have mentors and even some of our corporate partners are overseas and from all over the United States as well. And we say, if you want to expand your network exponentially, and if you want to do 3 years of biz dev in 3 months, come to a Techstars program. And if we don't have a mentor directly in this program already that can help you, chances are someone in the network knows that person.
Yeah.
And so we even kind of have companies write out a wish list of people that they want to meet. And if they're not in our network, we'll ping our colleagues in LA or New York or Berlin to help make that connection if they need it.
Yeah, and so something that I really admire about Techstars, the entire organization, and especially with the mobility program here in Detroit, is the give first mentality and philosophy. Because I think, like when you're able to give without expectation return, and we talked about how I interviewed Jason Mendelson, this was one of the things he wished for, like the totality of the Michigan startup ecosystem is, even if we don't have as much venture capital coming in as, the West Coast or the East Coast, even being able to give first and not necessarily expecting something back from the person you gave to, but maybe, you can expect something from like the ecosystem itself. Like being able to do that will, I think, help, build not just a thriving startup ecosystem, but accelerate the growth of an ecosystem.
For sure, yeah. And I think that's, something Techstars takes into account when we're spinning up new accelerators is, where can we help entrepreneurs build their business wherever they choose to live? So not just New York, not just the Valley, but wherever they choose to build their business. And so where is there a city or a location that Techstars can go in and help to grow and build that ecosystem to really give entrepreneurs as many resources as possible?
Yeah, and with that, there's also even now the Techstars Anywhere Accelerator, right?
Yeah, that was a new experiment that we ran. I believe it started just last year. The managing director and director, Ryan Cooter, and then Karina Costa, have done a really fantastic job of spinning up that program and just helping out founders who are building great businesses and are great entrepreneurs, but can't necessarily uproot their entire lives and move to a different city to go through an accelerator. So they've done a great job running that experiment. Their second demo day is actually tomorrow. So it's been really fun to watch that program grow too.
Yeah, definitely. And so you're recruiting currently the application's already ended for this year, this summer,
Yep,
right?
our applications closed about 2 weeks ago for 2018.
Yeah, and so this is the 4th year?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we will run our 4th program July through October this year. So we've ran 3 programs so far. I've invested in 33 different companies, like I mentioned, from 6 different countries. 31 of them are still active. And we actually had our first 2 acquisitions this past year. So Classics and Exotics from our 2015 class was acquired by Haggerty, which was really exciting. And then Split, also from our 2015 class, was acquired by Bosch.
Yeah. Yeah, 2015 was the first year, right?
Yep.
That's super cool. Yeah. And so how have you seen the growth of mobility in like the southeastern Michigan region grow over the past 3 years?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. When we first started talking about mobility, Techstars mobility in Detroit, a lot of people were like, what's mobility? Like, you mean like a mobile app on my phone? I don't get it. What do you mean? Now it's such a buzzword. Everybody is talking about it, which is fantastic. And I think Detroit is uniquely set up to be both a great city for entrepreneurs, but a really great city for mobility entrepreneurs. Like I said, there's just so many resources here for those companies, so much expertise, all of the OEMs and the suppliers that they could have access to by coming through Southeast Michigan. I think is just a great place to start a business.
Yeah, and so especially just because if you are business facing and you need to interact with OEMs, there's just so many here.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're lucky enough to have mentors from over 100 different OEMs and suppliers in the area and then all over the world come through our program to meet one-on-one with our founders. So I think they definitely recognize the value in this program, and then also what these entrepreneurs are building. And they want to learn and they want to help and they want to see them grow too.
Yeah. So how have been the VCs, how have they been in support of the growing mobility ecosystem here?
Yeah, so a local firm, Fontanellis, which I'm sure you're familiar with, started investing in mobility companies. I don't know their exact date, but way before anybody was talking about it. So I think they're very unique in that sense. Chris Thomas and Chris Stallman have been very active in our program and mentoring our startups and investing in a few as well. So they've been super helpful to all of our companies. And then some of the other local VC firms as well, who might not have a direct thesis in mobility like Fontanellis does, but they have an interest in it. So we've had a ton of great participation from the local VCs in the area. And then we have, quite a few visit from, again, all over the United States, who see the value in these companies in the program.
Yeah, definitely. Because, that brings to mind one in particular, Jeff Shocks from with Trucks VC, but he's sort of like ubiquitous. He's like everywhere. I see him everywhere. I mean, it might just be like the University of Michigan connection. Yeah. But he's been pretty, because I saw him at the demo day back in October, and I just chatted him up, and he was just super excited about like not just Techstars mobility, but Techstars giving such opportunity for the Detroit region, and like being able to associate itself with being at the forefront of the mobility industry.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff is great. He's been a mentor for us, and has actually come in to speak on IP law, because in his past life, I believe, is an IP attorney. And then Riley Brennan with Trucks VC has been through as well, I think every year, to mentor our companies, and has actually, again, invested in some of them as well. So they've been a great resource for us and our founders.
Yeah. And so let's talk about Techstars Mobility's mission to help grow the number of women in mobility executive positions. So you're the program director of Techstars Mobility, and I read there's a few blog posts that are on Techstars website about this specific topic. So feel free to just take the reins and give your 2 cents and your anything.
So diversity is something that's very important to Techstars as a whole. And so specifically at the mobility program, to be honest, it's been hard, and we haven't been great at it. Of our 33 companies, only, I believe, 5 of them have had female CEOs. It's a pretty low number. And, our mentors, in terms of the number of women mentors that we have, again, very low. And, you see that, I think, when you combine the tech industry, which is very male dominated, you combine that with the auto industry, which is very male dominated. I think it's hard to find women who, are starting businesses and are able to get the opportunities to help them succeed. And so we really want to do a better job at that, and get more women in here and help them out where we can. And something that I started doing with a few of my colleagues, Jessica Robinson, who you mentioned that you're talking to, and then Michelle Basuito, who's an attorney in the area, we spun up something called Women in Mobility Happy Hour. And so we started it at the auto show 2 years ago, so in 2017. And we were just kind of like, I know there's women out there who are doing awesome things in this industry, so let's get together. And the first one we had, we had about 40 people at it. And now I think the list is like, 60, 70, 80 people. We just had another meetup last week, and it's just a great turnout. And there's just a ton of brilliant women working in this industry, in this area. And so if they go on to start their own mobility companies, that's great. And we hopefully have a space here for them in the mobility program. But more than that, hopefully we can recruit them as mentors to come in and meet with our founders one-on-one. Because diversity, what we think is just inherently good. And so the more diverse perspectives and ideas that you can get, the better for your company and as a person. So it's something really important to us, and hopefully we can get more women involved in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And, Brene Brown has a quote out there, and she basically just wrapped it up as courage is contagious, right? And so, and it also actually reminds me of a quote. I forget who wrote it, but it was, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, it is that we are powerful beyond measure. And then later in the quote, it says, man, I'm blanking. It's like a, anyway, I'm completely blanking right now. But so what can like men do? What can what can we just like in general do to welcome more women in the mobility industry? I know you said the females in mobility happy hour, but what can we do to be a light, or not maybe a light, but like a companion or a champion. I think
Sure.
that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. I think you got it. I think Techstars and just tech industry as a whole has to do more to be more welcoming towards women and empowering women. But specifically, I think in the mobility space, being that it is mostly male dominated, if you come across a woman starting a business, I just think like you would do with any guy entrepreneur, like, are you treating them the same way? Are you offering the same sort of help that you would offer a man if you came across him in the same position? So anything I think that anybody can do to help a woman in the industry strengthen her voice and just make sure she's getting the same opportunities as a man would get. Yeah.
And so I actually have a question. So were you interested in cars when you were like younger, or no?
No. So I think there's a lot of people who come through our program, founders and mentors specifically, who just like geek out over cars.
Yeah.
I honestly don't get it. I've never been interested in it. I don't, if you told me a make and model of a car, I probably couldn't point it out on the street. So it's not my jam. But that doesn't necessarily, but that's not where mobility is going. So I think there's definitely that old school train of thought. And I think there will always be people who are car enthusiasts, and there will probably always be cars, and people who want to drive them. I don't feel that way, but that's fine.
Yeah, I bring that up because, I think that's a great example of like, you don't even have to be, because I think a big thing is just like interests that are shaped like early on. Like you don't have to have, the huge, you don't have to have like been working on cars since you were like 8 years old. It could totally be a new adopted thing as long as, you are at least getting to a domain expert type level, so you actually your stuff. But yeah, I think us as males, we can just provide voices, like leave our biases aside and just like listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unconscious bias is something that we talk a lot about at Techstars. Especially as we're going through like the application and selection process, check your biases when you're reviewing applications and watching team videos and watching product videos and reading through their answers. Do you have a bias against somebody who is speaking English as a second language? You might not know that you do, but you might. It's good to think about those things. Do you have a bias against somebody who's not based in the United States? Why is that? And just kind of think through those things deeply as we're reviewing applications, and try to just focus on finding the best founders who are starting the best companies, and just really think strategically about your biases that have been formed throughout your lifetime. Which is not your fault. It just happens.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we try to focus on a lot.
Yeah, I think a big thing that you mentioned there is like a lot of biases, they aren't, conscious.
Exactly.
That's what they are. They're unconscious biases. And so you really have to like actively think about what you're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that Techstars as a whole has, like I said, focused on quite a bit over the past few years. Because if you're not paying attention to those biases, chances are you're missing out on some really great founders and some really great companies.
Yeah, and even being open to feedback and allowing people to call you out when that happens, it's not like a jab at you. It's just, like, hey, be careful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so wrapping up here, before I get into my last question, where can people find more information about Techstars Mobility? Where can people reach out and, like if they have a mobility startup?
Yeah, for sure. So there's always our website, techstars.com/mobility. Ted and I are both active on Twitter. Just a quick search, you'll probably be able to find us. Mobility@techstars.com is an email that goes to both of us if you ever want to reach out. We're happy to help wherever we can, whether it's with advice or if you have a startup you want feedback on, we're happy to chat with you. If you're interested in being a mentor, absolutely reach out. We're always looking for new, great people to meet with our founders. And yeah, we are currently located in Ford Field. So if you're ever in the area, feel free to stop by our office. And then again, our program runs July 16th through October 9th, which will be our demo day. You mentioned being at our demo day last year. So come on out to our demo day. It's a great event for a mobility community and then also the Detroit community as a whole.
Yeah. So last question here. I'm asking this to all my guests because the entire month of May is dedicated to the mobility industry. And so for you, Lisa, what does mobility mean to you?
Mobility to me means being able to have access to transportation. And so I think that means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. I think the more effective and efficient we can make transportation for more people, I think society will be better as a whole.
And with that, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.